So, each panel shows a magi heading to Bethlehem to witness the Nativity.
It's Papa, and there's Grandfather.
And now look who is leading us all.
Why is it that we have to accept the world that we live in? Why can't we make it a better one?
One day you will lead us, as your father led this family and his father before him.
Medici blood must be spilled.
Does it scare you? A little. Let the fear drive you to work hard and prepare and lead us all to Christ.
Father!
You can't think I had anything to do with it.
Well, the medallion bears your seal, does it not?
Giuliano must have planted it in an effort to distract from his ridiculous father.
This was an act of terror, pure and simple.
Lorenzo does not have a crown, but he is king. Only I can give him a legitimate heir. Only I can protect him, so I implore you, if you love him, let him go.
Pushing him out of my bed will not be enough to bring him close to yours.
This is about power. We will not compromise. We will wipe them out.
Hey guys, and welcome back to my review of Medici Season 2, a season that was otherwise titled Lorenzo the Magnificent, as opposed to the first season, Medici Masters of Florence. But Medici is an amazing series. Just finished binging the second season last night, and originally I did not plan on reviewing it. But right now though, and after watching it, I'm quite tempted to review it, because even though I realized that the series probably had low viewership, and hence this video is going to suffer the same fate, the series was amazing. The second season in specific was even better than the first. So on this video, I'm gonna be talking my opinion on the many aspects of the series, or to the series, why more people should be watching it, and the extent of historical accuracy on the second season, and the one major historical deviation within, or noticeable deviation, even though that one as well is kind of not exactly a deviation, because historians among themselves have varied on the reporting of certain events. But anyway though, and in the spirit of not wasting any more time, and without further ado, let's get started and let's go. And number 1. So I'm not sure this is exactly intentional, but the series seems to be creating this trend by its second season, continuing to keep one Game of Thrones star in its fold. On its first season, that happened to be Richard Madden, who portrayed Cosimo de' Medici, the main protagonist of the season, and the very same actor who portrayed the role of Robb Stark, the White Wolf, on GOT. On the other hand though, and on the second season, that person happens to be Sean Bean, portraying the role of the main antagonist of the season, Jacopo de Pazzi. Now Sean Bean, of course, did a great job on this season. He's a great actor, and when it comes to GOT, he's none other than the very well portrayed Ned Stark. But number 2, the hanging of Jacopo de Pazzi at the end of the second season, and even though historically accurate, so it had to happen, that should definitely be added to one of those videos about the number of times Sean Bean has died on movies and on TV series, on screen in general. Honestly, while watching the premiere, the moment I realized what role the guy was portraying, he's portraying Jacopo de Pazzi, the guy known for his participation in the Pazzi conspiracy against the Medicis, and the guy known for having been executed for his participation in said conspiracy. I just started laughing. I mean, why do they always have to cast Sean Bean in these kind of roles where he ends up executed or killed? But moving on to number 3, the one major deviation, or the major deviations in general, historically speaking, on the second season always seem to happen to do something with Giuliano de' Medici. It's really almost the same thing with season 1, because Cosimo's arc seemed to be perfect on season 1, mostly by the book, but then his brother's arc, talking about Lorenzo the Elder here, kind of had a lot of things butchered out of it, historically speaking. But the first deviation over here happened to have to do something with the story of Simonetta, Vespucci, and Giuliano de' Medici. Historically speaking, there were a few changes that the series has made over here. Now, to understand what I'm about to say next, we need to know that Simonetta over here was considered one of the most beautiful women in Florence at the time, if not practically the most beautiful of them all. So for starters, there was the bit about Giuliano winning a portrait of her after a jousting tournament, and one that happens to have been painted by none other than Sandro himself. Simonetta then, and as opposed to what we got to watch with the one jousting tournament we got to watch on the second season, was actually awarded the title Tournament Queen. But over here though, and as opposed to that, it was all about Lucrezia Donati holding the title as part of the focus on her relationship with Lorenzo, which by the way is quite true to history. There was also the bit about Giuliano dying childless, which is not really true because he had a child out of an affair he had, and there was as well the bit about the fact that their love for one another was kind of platonic. I mean, it depends on what historian you're reading for or you're subscribing to, but the jury is really out in this one. I mean, the story varies from one historian to another. Some say it's just courtly love, like the kind of love that's more platonic than anything else, because Giuliano did consider that she was a married woman, that she came from a family that was heavily allied with the Medicis. But once again, we cannot consider this the biggest deviation because we're not really sure how it went down historically. The jury, and as I just mentioned, is forever gonna be out on that one. But number 4 though, another thing that I did love about this season is the adding of 2 characters out of the first season, kind of bridging the 2 seasons together, making sure that both of them felt quite related and connected. So to start with, the actors for both the roles of Piero de' Medici and Lucrezia de' Medici were changed from season 1 to portray their aging, becoming parents of a bunch of grown adults. The 2 actors portraying the roles on the first season were somewhere in their 20s at the time, so it wasn't really feasible to bring them back for season 2. But to keep things in sync, the series brought back Contessina de' Medici, wife to Cosimo, mother to Piero, and grandmother to Lorenzo. It did as well bring back Marco Polo, whom last we met on season 1 was in exile. Now both additions were brought about in flashbacks of Lorenzo's childhood, and both were most definitely much welcome additions. But number 5, just as a reminder, at the very end of season 1, Maddalena, mistress to Cosimo de' Medici, was pregnant with his child. Now that child is the man we came to know on season 2 as Marco de' Medici, brother to Piero, and uncle to Lorenzo, Bianca, and Giuliano de' Medici. But moving on to number 6, while on the subject of talking about all these characters, old and new, all these actors and actresses on the series, the acting for this season was just plain spectacular. Now at first I thought I would not like this season as much as I liked the first season, but I ended up a lot more interested in how it all went down. But however, though number 7, it's not just that the second season was extremely well acted, but a lot more historically accurate than the freshman season of the series. The end of season 1 saw Lorenzo the Elder, brother to Cosimo, killed by orders from Andrea de Pazzi, who by the way, and just in case it wasn't really clear from the words of Contessina on season 2, to a young Lorenzo, happens to be father to none other than Jacopo de Pazzi. Now this entire bit about Lorenzo the Elder, the death of Lorenzo the Elder on season 1, that was not historically accurate, because if I remember correctly, and I think I do, the guy died a natural death of old age, and had 2 children that the series never seemed to have presented. Speaking though of these 2 children of Lorenzo the Elder, they represent the branch of the family that would later on birth the Dukes and Grand Dukes of Tuscany. 2 of them as well, grandchildren to Lorenzo the Elder, should play a role in the story of Lorenzo the Magnificent, and they both do get to be opposed to the Cosimo branch of the family down the road and historically. So I sure hope the series does find a way to add them in and retcon the story, and present us with the Lorenzo the Elder lineage on future seasons, and hence a continuation of the story on said seasons. Number 8, even though the death of Lorenzo the Elder on the first season was completely made up and not exactly by the book, historically by the book, it did allow the death of Giuliano on the second season, which is actually historically accurate and everything, to draw a beautiful parallel to that one. The audience on the other hand got to draw parallels and see differences between Cosimo and his grandson Lorenzo by presenting us with the death of their siblings. So in terms of grief, they were kind of the same, but quite different in terms of handling the situation. The anger that Lorenzo harbored on the finale was quite well acted, quite genuine, and quite understandable. Should Lorenzo the Magnificent have hung these men without trial? Maybe yes and maybe no, but to see your brother stabbed 19 times to his death just because some villains, as Lorenzo did refer to them, couldn't outgrow their need to have the power that the 2 Medicis over here had to their name, that most definitely puts things into perspective. Number 9 though, the relationship that Lorenzo had with his wife, Clarice Orsini, that was decently portrayed. Now the way they are at odds at the very beginning, that was very true historically, because she did have quite the religious upbringing, as opposed to his humanist approach and school of thought, one that was pretty dominant at the time in Florence. Their marriage as well did start historically as one of political nature, but historically as well it did quite quickly grow into one characterized by a great deal of love and a great deal of respect that they both had for one another. Lorenzo, in specific, did harbor a great deal of love for Clarice here, and it was evident by his grief for her after she passed away, as he wrote a letter to the Pope describing how painful and agonizing it was to lose her out of his life. On another note though, the acting for Clarice, the religious woman, making the choice to marry Lorenzo, and then slowly falling in love with him, while still not always approving of every choice that he makes. She's approving of some, not approving of others, that's what I mean over here. That was off the roof in my opinion. The way the role was portrayed was just amazing. Number 10. Two of the most emotional moments, if not actually the most emotional moments on the season, were actually true to history. The first one had to do with the death of Simonetta Vespucci, while the second one had to do with the death of Giuliano de Medici. Now the thing about the death of Simonetta is I'm not really sure that historically Giuliano was there, I don't even think he was there, but nonetheless the impact is real, the unwillingness to love anyone else is real. The one thing though that did majorly deviate over here, and again it has to do with Giuliano, is the fact that he was engaged to be married right before he ended up murdered. But number 11 though, the acting for Bianca was one more amazing thing about this season. But nonetheless, the story of Bianca in general, her exile with her husband, whom she did love dearly, all of that, and historically speaking, is pretty much spot on. Number 12, the series has been renewed for a third season, and the third season is going to be the sequel to the story of Lorenzo. That is pretty much unlike what happened with the story of Cosimo, because the end of season 1 was the end of the Cosimo de Medici story. I would assume that by the end of the third season, we get a glimpse of the life of his son Piero, the 2 years of his unofficial rule of Florence and of his exile, with his rule historically being pretty short. He was overthrown from the rule of Florence before years later the Medicis came to be on top of Florence once again. Now, if the series plans on maintaining the same pace and maintaining the same quality as storytelling, they've got a lot of Medicis out there to tell the story of, and they could do that over the course of so many seasons, as many as they would like. You've got Medicis who became popes, Medicis who ruled over Tuscany, Medicis who ruled over Florence as well, and even Medicis who did shine historically outside the borders of Italy, like Catherine de' Medici for example. But number 13, I cannot really do a full review of the entire season on a 10 to 15 minute video, but I can say without reasonable doubt that one of the scenes that I really loved about this season was the scene with Sixtus kind of approving of what they planned to do with Lorenzo and Giuliano, yet not really approving, because he couldn't really condone murder. Now, while the words were not exactly the same, not exactly the same statements that he made historically, it did still feel like I was reading out of a history textbook, because it was exactly to the effect of the words that he did say in reality when he was in that situation. So you probably know what I mean here, but he did kind of give the approval without really giving the approval. Number 14, if you know anywhere I could get the soundtrack for this series, if you're a viewer of the series and you did like the soundtrack as much as I liked it, do let me know where to find it, because the soundtrack was amazing. I mean, a big part of feeling the scenes, getting the emotion of all of it, was definitely about the soundtrack over there. I mean, it does put you in the mood, it does tell you how to feel, even as a scene is starting, so you're pretty much emotionally prepared, ready, and good to go before you get to the peak of any scene on this season. But finally though, number 15, I would have loved to have discussed every single moment of every single episode of this season on this video, what I liked about them, what I didn't like, do a deep analysis, and all of that good stuff. But nonetheless, it's one video and an 8-episode season, so it's kind of really tough to do that. But to make a long story short, I think this season was amazing. I've got to say, if you haven't watched the series or the season, you've got to go and watch it. You're gonna love it. If you are a big fan of Game of Thrones, this in and out of itself is a Game of Thrones, or in this case, one throne. The major difference over here is the lack of flying dragons, the fact that one was written by GRRM and the other one happens to be written by those who lived the story, those who made their lives that way. It's really beautiful, it's really amazing, and I give the second season a 9 out of 10. But with that being said though, my work here is done, so let me know in the comments what you thought of the second season of Medici. Let me know if you like the story, if you're looking forward to the third season. Let me know what other Medicis would you like to see on future seasons of the series. Let me know as well if you did like this video by dropping it one of those much appreciated likes, subscribing to this channel, and enabling notifications for my future videos, community posts, and live streams. But until the next time you tune in for another one of my videos, Medici or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning into this review, and have a great day.